Welcome to From Caving In to Crushing It, the podcast for those who find themselves immersed in adversity and choose to write their story instead of having others write it for them. I'm Drew Deraney, and I'm your host. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, Drew.
It's
Nice to be here.
It's nice to have you here. And the last time we talked was at a Master Networks event, and we hit it off pretty well. To me, it's amazing how you can meet somebody and just by asking the right questions or being open to learning about somebody, a topic comes up that aligns you and realize that we have a lot more similarities than we have.
Absolutely. And then we talked the whole rest of the night.
Yeah. It was really impactful for me, which is why I remember there saying I want to have you on. And
thank you. I appreciate that. I felt the same way.
Well, thank you. And I love that. This obviously the podcast is From Caving In to Crushing It. And we know that we all have things that happen in our life that challenge the heck out of us. And it's a small percentage of us who get stronger after going through these challenges. And you, to me, are one of those people who've gotten stronger. And I really want to give the audience a little bit to learn about you and how you got to where you are and the type of person you are.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I ask you to reach back as far as you want to reach back in your life and tell us about what led up to that defining moment that had you wake up and realize that there's more to life than the way I'm living it and what you did about it.
Well, that's interesting because I go all the way back to my parents, of course, when you're little. And I think that I was very fortunate in that I had a very progressive, out of the box childhood. Mm-hmm. My parents they had me in 1960, they met each other late in life. They were not a typical, get married young, have kids. Both of them had their careers. Right. My dad was an apprentice to Frank Lloyd Wright, very super creative, helped build Taliesin West in Arizona at a young age. And my mom was the first person in her family to ever go to college, let alone a female to go for her master's in early childhood education. So I realized, we grew up in a Frank Lloyd Wright style home in Westchester, New York. And, if you guys know Frank Lloyd Wright, nature comes in. So we have all glass. That was my bedroom. So I woke up looking at trees, and Dad was a prolific artist as well. And I think a big impact for me was when I was 7 and he brought me, of course, where else? To the Guggenheim Museum to see a Kandinsky show. And that really, oh my God, he's still my favorite artist. And being very supported in the arts, creativity, open ways of thinking. It's how I was raised, and mom was very into emotional health, always, because she had her struggles in her teens with emotional health that she would never share with me. But I learned as she aged, she put me in therapy when I was 8. And I have to tell you, at the time I didn't understand really what was going on. But I have to tell you, what it taught me at a very young age was to be very in touch with how I feel. It was like a catalyst to teach,
And I could see that too. And now, did Mom ever go to in therapy herself, or did
yes,
she?
But not.
She did. Okay,
not like she was. And later in life, actually, only really in the last 5 years or so did I think I realized why she was doing that. I mean, she always said, she saw me as an unhappy kid, because when my brother came along, I was no longer the center of their world, because they had, at 40, they had me, but at 41, they had my brother. So we were very close in age, but, he took away my spotlight. you
Yep,
know,
absolutely.
and that was a struggle for me. Although I have to say, it helped me also to learn that when you're going through something and you need help sorting things through,
Mhm.
that help is okay. Help is good,
Absolutely is.
you
Absolutely.
know, and I learned that at a very young age. I'm very passionate about emotional health, and especially with kids.
Mm.
Uh,
Now, did
uh,
you characterize yourself as an unhappy child, or you think that was mom just kind of like,
I think that was mom, but I think I was
yeah,
I was not the person I am to. I mean, I think I was the opposite. I was
mhm,
not
yeah,
comfortable in social situations.
right.
I didn't feel confident, you
Hmm.
know. That definitely developed big time as I went through high school and then
Hmm.
went into college.
Yeah, and I think probably being, and it's also finding the right therapist for you.
A
The
100%
young
that you
and
say that.
yeah,
100%. I'm
yeah.
talking to a lot of parents right now who I'm saying to them, you know, if this may not be the right therapist.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's the important piece too, and I feel for the parents who aren't in the quote unquote industry or don't know the right people to ask or the right questions to ask,
Yeah,
because yeah, the that it's yes, it's important the younger you are to ask for help. It's also finding the help from the right people, the ones who are aligned with your personality and their expert,
100%.
yeah, and their
Like
expertise.
I can tell you, my daughter, when she started going through stuff in
Yeah,
middle school, now I see it even in elementary school, but
right.
for her, you know, she's 23 now. When she started going through stuff in middle school, immediately I said, okay, we're going to find you some support.
Mhm.
That's it.
Right,
Period. End of story. And
right.
her first therapist, um, she said to me, Mom, I think my therapist has an eating disorder. How is she going to help me?
I
But
love
that was her perception. You know what I
perception
mean?
is
Like
important.
that's what
Yeah,
she, so I said, okay, it's time to
right,
find another therapist.
right. Yeah, yeah. No,
If
and that
she's
and that's
saying
true.
that,
Yeah.
then there's something that isn't right, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And kudos to you as a young parent at the time to realize that.
Oh,
And not just think it's your child resisting, some parents are like
in
that.
my younger years at going to therapy, I
Yeah.
had a therapist
Yeah.
that was very, mm, she was not a warm and fuzzy person.
Right.
And I'll never forget because I've always had a struggle with, you know, weight and
Right.
eating.
Yeah.
Um, I'll never forget. She put me on a diet. I was always on a diet. I think I was little. I don't even know how old.
Wow. Yeah.
And we were on a diet. And I'll never forget. She would eat Oreos in our session in front of me.
Knowing full well that, yeah, that's interesting. Okay. So that,
And I mean, remember, this was the 60s.
yeah,
And it
yeah.
was in a very progressive type of a place that
Right,
I
right.
didn't realize at the time that it was the
Hmm.
Center for Preventative Psychiatry in White Plains, which
Oh, wow.
at the time was like this cutting edge, you know,
Hmm.
here she
Hmm.
was. I was so angry.
Cookie therapy, right?
Then she
Cookie
said to me,
therapy.
well, you know, I'll never forget there are Stella Doro cookies that are sugar free. Why don't you get some of those?
Interesting.
I
Wow.
mean,
That's
yeah,
cutting edge. Yeah.
those are little things you know,
Remember,
little,
that's amazing. And you recall that at
oh
such
my
a young
God.
age. Yeah.
Yes.
So, so knowing that helped you, in your teens and whatnot, um, was there any occurrence, external circumstance when you got older that kind of challenged you, where that early help assisted you in coming through healthier?
Oh, it assisted me all through my life
Mm,
because when I got into college, college was great. I went to art school,
mhm,
um, created a very prolific, great experience. And it helped me. This is really interesting, actually, because when I was in college, I was going through a tough time with a relationship.
mhm,
And of course, I sought out a therapist.
mhm,
That's what you do. And I was what,
mhm.
21?
Right, right.
On my own, you
Mhm,
know. And she was great. And at one point, I was struggling so much that at each week I would go to individual and group therapy.
okay.
And the group actually helped me extract myself out of this relationship more so than individual.
Okay. All right.
Which I'm a big proponent of group therapy.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously group therapy is helpful. Again, like just like having the right therapist, it's the right people in the group. And if you have a good therapist who can align the proper people in a group, oh yeah, you don't know what other people are going through, and things can resonate, and they can help you because they're going through it. So I definitely am a proponent for group therapy, providing, what we just
Yeah.
talked about.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
So
yeah, but that was just one, in college, but
yeah.
really all through my life, when I feel that I need somebody to help me through a time, I think that it's really helped me to overcome my, some of the things that are, well, because I study energy a lot right now, very deeply.
Yeah.
There's something called a core wound,
Okay.
right? So before you're 7, there's something, most people have a core wound that they have to struggle through,
Right.
to unblock themselves from. And mine is, seeing my family in the relationship with money.
Yep.
And it's something that I worked through in therapy for years, as an adult. And I could say now where I'm at in dealing with all of that, and in working like I have with energy and trust and manifestation and visualization and all that stuff, I can say that I have let that fear is no longer here. It's not there.
Well,
It's
that's
gone.
awesome. Yeah. Well, no, that's important, and I'm gonna guess, and you're gonna tell me if I'm correct here, is that you learned over time to surround yourself with the right human beings.
100%.
So especially even with the money piece too, right? You surround yourself with experts who know how to handle it. So that's who you get your
100%.
advice from.
I have to say, I always, even when I was in my mid-20s, after I graduated, I started working, I got myself a financial advisor because I'm very independent, and I never went home after college. I went out on my own, and I knew that I needed to learn how to do this so that I didn't want to struggle like I saw my parents struggling.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
it's a really big challenge.
Yeah. Now, do you think your mom and dad realized that the relationship with money issue had gotten to you as
I
far
think
as a childhood trauma?
I it was it I don't know if you ever read Ayn Rand, The Fountainhead,
Did
but
not.
mom and dad were there. They were not into selling themselves out to capitalistic greed and
Okay.
society. Do you know
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
I do. I understand you.
They lived we always had everything that we needed. They lived very simply, and very, their values and priorities were on happiness and health, and my dad, sometimes he worked for the World Bank, and he went away to Indonesia and Philippines and worked for underdeveloped countries building homes for the poor.
Oh, wow.
And he was away a lot, and we lived in Westchester. I mean, at the time it was not what it is now, certainly,
Right. Sure.
but there was anxiety and struggle.
Of course. Of course. Yeah, especially if as a young child, there's a lot of comparison going on, especially if like the kids around you are getting these, materialistic stuff that you're not getting. And at a young age, it's hard not to compare them. Hell, at adulthood, it's hard
Yeah.
not to compare. So I'm sure that was a challenge for you too.
Yes. I'll never forget that, because the things that I wanted were not your your average. I mean, I had Barbies and all that stuff, but I'll never forget. I wanted this beautiful pillow. I wanted a pillow.
Yeah.
It was beautiful, handmade it was gorgeous. And I'll never forget, it was $25. And my mom said, okay, you can get that one thing for Christmas or for your birthday, or
Right.
and that was a really super special thing. And handmade, beautiful, artistic gifts to me have always been,
Oh,
that's one of a kind special thing,
where's the pillow now?
probably up in the attic somewhere. I
All
think I
right.
still have it. No,
Good.
serious.
I
Yeah.
figured you would still have it.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's really well. Maybe you can take it out this weekend and then they'll give you those memories back because it is nice to be able to. It's not really the materialistic piece that's near and dear to your heart. You remember that story,
Yes, I
The
remember
pillow
a
tells
lot
a
of those
story.
types of
That's
stories.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after you graduated college and went on to work, what kind of work did you end up doing professionally before you're in doing what you're doing now?
So I was not your struggling artist, stay in the studio type.
Oh, okay.
I needed to, at the time I had blossomed and I wanted to talk to people. So I started selling art in New York City for a
Wow.
gallery.
Okay.
And it evolved and grew. I met people, and I in and out of different parts of the art and collectibles world for almost 30 years.
Wow. Wow. That must have been rewarding
It was great.
selling. Do you remember the time you got to you sold your first piece of art and what that
Yes.
was like? Tell me that story. I want to
I
hear.
remember one of the most impactful. So back in the 80s,
Uh-huh.
one of the biggest gallery corporations in the world was Circle Fine Art Corporation,
Okay.
and which unfortunately is no longer there, which is sad, but
Mm.
a lot of things have changed. They had galleries all around the world, and there was a big one in Soho. There was one in the South Street Seaport, and that's where I started to sell art.
Okay.
So I would go down to the seaport, and it was the big fish markets there, and it was a Sunday morning, and all the fish smells are coming in, and in walks this guy with a woman, and I knew they were from out of town.
Okay.
And at the time, we had two galleries, and this was at the beginning of, I don't know if you remember, but Disney animation art, where
Mhm.
the original cells were being sold, and then
Okay.
the Bugs Bunny cells and all of that. Well, we had a little gallery of animation art, and then we had another gallery right next door of fine art. And I was in the animation gallery, and he came in. I remember his name. I mean, I remember everything. Long story short, he ended up being the biggest sale. My sale was the biggest sale in the history of the animation art sales of Circle Fine Art,
Wow.
because he was from out of town. He had just gotten married to this woman, and he wanted to buy her and set her up with almost like a museum of these. He loved Bugs Bunny and
Mhm.
he loved Chuck Jones. That was his. I mean, he pretty much bought every single Chuck Jones animation cell that I could find.
Oh my goodness.
And it was unbelievable. So I became like the expert of animation art.
Okay.
And that launched me into a whole career in animation art sales. And it
Wow.
was the beginning of this whole thing. So I was one of the sort of sales forefronts of the animation art world.
Wow.
And from there, I mean, I worked for Chuck Jones directly.
Oh, really? So you
I
got to meet
traveled.
him.
I
Wow.
traveled with him.
Jeez.
I worked for a company on Long Island also, who was and he subsequently moved to Florida, but he was one of the forefronters of the Simpsons art,
Wow.
Hanna-Barbera.
Yep. I
And
remember
then
Hannah.
they called me, they recruited me to work for, I don't know if you remember, when the Warner Brothers studio stores opened.
I do remember that.
There
Absolutely.
was 4 original stores.
Yep.
Well, and then they were expanding, and the one around here was in Danbury, Connecticut.
Okay.
And they hired me to be National Gallery Operations Manager.
Oh, wow.
It was the best, most incredible time I've ever had.
Ah, that's awesome.
So I traveled around with the head of gallery, and
Yeah.
we opened up stores, and within the store we had a gallery, and we trained people on how to sell the art, and I did shows and traveled with some of the artists. It was amazing.
Wow. Do you miss doing that stuff?
I do. I miss it.
Is there a way to still get like dabble in it just to still have your
Yeah,
passion?
well, I started my own art business.
You did?
I did.
Oh, I'd love to hear
I
about
thought I
that.
told you about that. Yeah.
Vaguely, but I didn't realize that it was another Business.
It's
So
a
I want to hear.
business
All right.
because I'm working on my next 30 years.
Wow. All right. So tell me a little
Oh
about that.
yeah. So I got my whole next 30 years.
All right. Good.
So I'm as I've said, I'm very into energy,
Uh-huh.
and I believe that when you become open to things,
Yeah.
I get messages.
Okay.
I get messages from my dad, I get messages from people that have passed on and
Right.
different
Right.
things.
Yeah.
So I've been getting messages in the last probably almost 7 or 8 years.
Okay.
Do my art, do my art. This is
Mm,
your legacy. This is
good.
who you are.
Okay.
And so I started an art business. Um, the name came to me, and it's out there. I have a Facebook, I have a website, I have an
What is the
Instagram.
name of it?
Beyond the Eye Art. So
On
it's
the
my
eye.
art is about beyond what the eye can see.
Wow. Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. And it's flourishing.
Not yet because I'm focusing on Tutor Doctor,
Well, that's what I was going to ask you.
but I'm
So,
building.
how did you go? How did you get into Tutor Doctor?
Okay,
That should be another
so
good story.
in 2008,
Yeah.
when the art market was,
Oh yeah,
that's when it all changed, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um, I got out of what I was doing. The last thing I was doing was I was national sales manager for a company actually in Nyack, New York called
Okay.
iPhoto Art,
Mhm.
where we had the license to sell the photographs, the original photographs from Life
Oh
magazine.
wow. Okay.
So I would go into the archives in the Time Life building and curate shows
Mhm.
and work with photo galleries around the world.
Wow.
Really, it was great.
Yeah.
But 2008, everything
You did it.
changed.
Yep. Absolutely.
So I got out of it and I started helping a colleague to start a business. He had the opportunity to start a business.
Hmm.
Long story short, it was great. I mean, but I learned everything. I'm the type of person where like knowledge is power. I want to learn as much
Yeah.
as I can, you
Absolutely.
know?
Yep.
So we built a business. I brought on a good friend and she ran our finance department, and that lasted about 5 years.
Right. So you're talking about 2013-ish. Okay.
Something like that. I
Something
don't,
like
all
that.
I remember is when I turned 50, I
Yeah.
realized I know how to treat customers.
Mm-hmm.
I know how to hire people. I know how to run a business. I've
Yeah.
got to find something that
Mm.
kind of brings it together for
Yep.
me.
Absolutely.
And that's when I found Tutor Doctor, and I wasn't actually looking for it.
Yeah.
I thought maybe I wanted to be a business coach,
Okay. All right.
and I'm really glad I didn't do that.
Okay. Good. Well, good. That's it's good
I'm
to
really glad that I did,
know.
but I was at a franchise broker because a friend of mine who I would meet and network with every week
Yeah.
because she was unemployed.
Right.
She was searching. She doesn't have it. I had my daughter and I was married,
Mm.
and I have my daughter and she doesn't have kids. And she said, Jessica, I just went to this seminar, and you know that there are business coaching franchises. You need to go down and talk to this guy, Charlie. And
Mm.
so I went down and I talked to Charlie, and if you ever looked at a franchise, they do this whole deep dive profiling on you, and he matched me with a couple of business coaching franchises. And
Mm-hmm.
then he said, I think you should look at Tutor Doctor because it meets a lot of your needs. Flexibility, ability to be there for your daughter to pick her up from school. You don't need a brick and mortar location, blah,
Right.
blah, blah. And that's how I found it.
Wow. That's a great story.
And it was almost 12 years.
Oh, it's been 12 years. That's right. Wow.
I'm going into 11, and I've like another, yeah.
Good for you. Absolutely. And it's great that you're able to do your passion with the art and still run this business.
Well, you know what I realized it's because of going through what I've learned
Yeah.
through having this business.
Mm.
I've learned that, and it's because of a couple of people that I've networked with that I've learned have shared with me
Yeah.
their experience of my story.
Right. Right.
They've said to me, Jessica, you really have to realize that you've made your Tutor Doctor business sort of so much of the merging of the legacy of your mother and father.
You have.
I was
Yep.
like, wow, I didn't, can I tell you, I didn't realize that
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
until
Yeah.
really maybe
It's a very
about the
good point.
last 5 or 6 years.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point. You took the strengths of both that helped shape you and put them into your business. Good for you. And yeah, sometimes we do it without even realizing it. And other people,
I didn't even, well, because as you become older and you
yeah,
become wiser
yeah,
and you work on a lot of your crap,
absolutely, yeah.
you realize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good for you. So I'm going to wrap this up with a couple questions. Second, I got two questions. The first one is, you're sitting down with 7 to 10-year-old Jessica, and you want to give her some advice about life. What are you going to tell her?
Well, now that I've just told you about how I was raised and everything like that,
Mm-hmm.
I would tell her, be true to who you are your entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ever listen to anybody else's inflicting change or opinion or whatever it is on you. Be true to you and understand that you are the most important thing in your world.
Love that. The last question. Now switch hats, and you're sitting down with young Jessica, the entrepreneur businesswoman, and you want to give her advice about business. What are you going to tell her?
Well, a couple of things. Learn that you can always negotiate. Don't ever take anything in verbatim. Negotiate what you feel you need that's going to be best for you.
Mm-hmm.
And don't let anyone ever take advantage of you. And the other thing is if you have a business that you've started, always think about in the early on phase of succession plan.
Yep.
Because are you going to have your business the whole rest of your life?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a time span? Do you want to retire? Do you want to open up an art gallery and move on to your next phase of life? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But think about it early on and be really wise about it and plan.
That's great advice. Many of us don't think about how to end something we're just starting.
Well, that's something that I've just learned that I wish that I had thought about earlier.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, the audience definitely has gotten to know the essence of Jessica Bush, and I'm sure quite a few of
I
them
appreciate this, Drew.
Oh, you're very welcome. There's going to be people who want to reach out to you and get to know you better. What's the best way for them to reach you?
Probably on my personal email. I mean, I have a Tutor Doctor email. I have a Tutor Doctor everything. I'm out there on social media big time, or through LinkedIn in my personal page. And I have a Beyond the Eye Art page.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, what's
too.
what's that website? If you want to
BeyondTheEyeArt.com.
Beyond.
But it's on my LinkedIn.
Okay, beautiful.
But probably LinkedIn through my personal email address.
All right, we will send them there. Well, Jessica, thank you very much. I'm grateful you're in my life.
Thank you so much, Drew. And we should get together soon.
We definitely should. We definitely should. And I'm glad I decided to go to that mixer.
Me too.
Master Networks. That's how we met. All right, Jessica, you take care.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good one. Thanks, everyone.
Too. Good luck, everybody. Take care. Be well.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe and give us a review to help others find it. I'd like you to answer this question. Are you living the life you want to live, or are you living the life others want you to live? I'd like you to think about that for a second, because I strongly suggest you live the life you want to live. If you want to learn more about what I stand for and my services and how I'm able to help many men get out of their own way, please go to my website at www.profitcompassion.com. Feel free to also email me at drew@profitcompassion.com. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Take care of yourself and choose to write your own story instead of letting others write it for you.